Just to set the agenda, just if we can go down real briefly, do you believe, just for the record, that the federal government, any part of the federal government, is knowingly concealing evidence about UAPs from the public?
Yes, sir.
100%.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. I also want to just go down the line. I know many of you have already said this, but I just, for the record again, just briefly, what do you believe UAPs could be or are?
Strong evidence that they are non-human, higher intelligence.
I echo my colleague's comment, sir.
Genuinely do not know.
Don't know, but we must find out.
Okay.
So welcome to The Bigger Picture with me, Nick, and my co-host, Sid. How are you, Sid?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm a little bit under the weather. Still got a cold, but getting better. Did you actually see the hearings?
Yes, I did.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing, yeah. Because the first time it was Louis Elizondo in there, and then this lieutenant, senior lieutenant. What is his rank? Lieutenant
Rear
General?
Admiral.
Rear Admiral. Sorry, why
yeah,
I'm calling him
yeah.
lieutenant. He's Rear Admiral. Yeah. So he's like
Rear Admiral, because he's not anymore. It's like a former.
retired. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this was very important, and in this one, a Rear Admiral said that this is a non-human intelligence involved in that. So it's a big, big, big disclosure, to be honest.
But did you actually see the whole 7 hours? Because it's
Not full 7 hours.
I actually, I kind of sort of watched the first hour, but I was also sort of in bed and trying to sleep. So I actually, there's a lot of cool stuff in there. I'm gonna try to work my way through the entire 7 hours, and then we'll probably come back to it in 2 weeks. But I did watch sort of summaries of it, and I got some 1 or 2 clips and a lot of other stuff. Do you want to say anything before we jump in?
Well, first, before we jump in, I just want to say that disclosure is happening, and Trump is not even in the office, and already we have signs that okay, something amazing is about to be disclosed. Let's see what. I hope it's alien, not the Project Blue Beam.
That's what my brother always says. Every time I start talking about this stuff, he says, "Oh, well, Project Blue Beam, Project Blue Beam."
To be honest, it is a possibility because we are in a weird time when we are having so many wars right now, 2 big wars, which is like we are at the edge of nuclear war. Basically, what's happening in Russia and Ukraine because Biden somehow allowed. That is also political. We will talk about that, but the point is like we could have that war, and aliens are suddenly roaming around but doing nothing. Is like, yeah, it is a possibility that it's just a Project Blue Beam.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a possibility, and lots of stuff is going on. These hearings were actually announced like last year. There would be hearings in sort of October, November this year after the election. So they were pre-announced and pre-planned, and after the summer,
it was pre-planned, but the point is, before we had hearing, but there was literally nothing came out of that. And if like for example Kamala had won, then we would have the same thing, that nothing would have come out of it. The reason people were freely expressing their views is because there is a change in management.
Agree. And do you also, because I think some people do, when these hearings started, actually there was quite a lot of commotion on Twitter. Do you think right now sort of disclosure is irreversible or imminent, or do you look at it differently?
It was imminent anyway. It's irreversible now. There is no way they can hide it, and now they have like a strong base because like now the government, it's not just Trump, right? It's the whole management, his whole management, especially Joe Rogan is a part of it. Dragon believer.
Actually, that's good that you brought it up.
Yeah.
We're first gonna tackle the dragons before we go into the hearings.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so just I'm not sure if people picked up on it, but Elon Musk sort of shared.
It wasn't Elon Musk. It's basically
Elon Musk shared this picture of Joe
Yeah.
Rogan's new bio on Twitter, which says "Dragon Believer." So when I saw that, I had to sort of dig into it a little bit. So first, are you a Dragon Believer?
I am a believer of everything, to be honest. But yeah, Dragon believer, yes. After View mocked Dragon believers, yes, I am a believer now.
Okay, cool.
So the backstory is like, for example, after losing election to Trump, they are start calling out the people who actually helped, which is true because Joe Rogan had a big voice, so he had a podcast with him which had a big impact. So now they are attacking Joe Rogan, and how they did that? By calling him a dragon believer.
Oh,
So this is what happened in the view. There's a clip actually on Joe Rogan's profile. While I'm explaining it, you can go to his profile and see the whole clip he shared
okay.
on his Twitter of View.
Okay, I'm gonna check.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
didn't
just
know.
check that. I'll explain the issue before. So they were criticizing Joe Rogan, and they said like now the time, like they were explaining that View, like MSNBC had like really great uh, r- uh, talk show host who was giving a genuine uh, views, like realistic, and now the people are listening to the dragon believer who is Joe Rogan, and then she
Oh,
doubled down on him. So what Elon Musk, what Joe Rogan did, he retweeted that and he said, I am gonna have this as my new profile description, dragon believer, to mock them. And then there is a clip where he's talking about like what if dragons were real.
yeah. I actually preloaded that. I didn't see that he put that
But
on.
the whole story started with this View clip where they mocked him to be like, yeah,
Okay, so this is an interesting clip. Here they sort of explain, how it could be possible that dragons are real. And this guy that's now gonna talk, he doesn't actually believe in dragons, but he's sort of
yeah.
explaining sort of the reasoning behind it.
Evidence is the reason there's no fossils of dragons is because they had bird bones and they were actually very delicate animals. But a handful of these a small population of these giant flying lizards existed and basically encompassed all these different countries where they all depicted fighting dragons in their own way, and they were all killed off by knights or whatever it is, and then didn't fossilize.
What?
So it's like the science is saying that if there were lizards big enough to fly around and eat people, they didn't have bones that could fossilize.
So it'd be like an eagle.
Right. And that's why all these human populations around the world have depictions of them, because they did actually exist.
Now, are there any stories of dragons?
Well, I don't have to play the whole clip.
Yeah.
But,
By the way, I also shared the View clip.
Oh, the few clip. Oh, wait. I'm going to check.
So
Did you put it on DM?
I just sent you Joe Rogan's
Oh, okay.
tweet. So where he's saying this is going to be my new X description.
Yeah, I got it.
So this is how it started. By the way, Joe Rogan talk about like this. So he's saying this is my new X description, and this is the clip where they mocked him.
Okay, here we go.
Foreign adversaries who are infiltrating our social media because it is prudent for us to stay that way.
But
so when you see something that really pisses you off, you should triple check that one. Yeah.
But I think that's why people like our show, because they know that we are checked by ABC News. But
We're checked by everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if we're wrong, we have the legal note here.
The human legal.
But we went from Walter Cronkite. Basically, to this guy Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. I checked it. He
believes in dragons?
He believes in dragons.
Did you triple source that?
Yes, I did. And he also thinks that dragons, like dinosaur type of animals, roamed the earth when people did. So this is the type of really, really bad information that's going out there.
Well, in defense, there are some really
But
good
it's possible
news.
that Donald Trump did roam the earth when dinosaurs were here.
There are some really good news kind of influencer types, and I think it's great that they're getting information about global and current events in front of younger people who maybe don't tune into traditional media. But to Sarah's point, there has to be some fact checking and actually verification of the things that are shared, because I spend a lot of time on Instagram Reels.
Okay, anyway.
So this is this bad story of whole dragon belief. They mocked him, and then he said, "Okay, yeah, fine." To be honest, there is The thing is, dragons are very much depicted in many cultures, and
Yeah,
they were like separately developed. Like Chinese culture was developed separately from Middle Eastern culture. There was like, I'm not talking about new Middle East. I'm talking about ancient Middle East,
yeah,
like
for sure.
Babylonian. That is Middle East, right?
Yeah,
So they have dragon type creatures. Chinese have it, and other Asian countries, and even like if you go to Vikings, they have some kind of this. So there is a possibility that there maybe were some creatures who, and that is, you know, I personally believed in portals. I think there are portals which were at least were open back in the day. So there was a possibility that these creatures from other dimension enters, do their bidding, and then go back to their
yeah.
dimension.
Actually, that's a very portals. The portals are that's a separate topic in itself, by the way. But David Paulides, I'm a big fan of David Paulides, and he does the Missing 411,
Yeah,
and he also connected that to. Well, he sort of leaves it open, but he also does studies to portals and Skinwalker Ranch and all that kind of stuff. And I also have some connection to cryptids, especially Bigfoot.
yeah,
And exactly what you said, like his one of his sort of working theories is that some of these creatures that are sighted might like Bigfoot sort of come and go through portals, right?
yeah,
As it actually was reported on Skinwalker Ranch itself by scientists.
yeah. So this is what I never heard of the guy. I've just heard of him first time. But the story is not just him. It's like a very common
Yeah,
knowledge. A lot of people, a lot of kooks like me believe in that there were portals, and the different beings enters in our world, and their shape changes. So they, it's not like they look like they are dragons, but they can change their shape to do whatever they want when they enter the third dimension, like our world.
yeah, because with dragons, even though you even have in Maya and Aztec religions, you have depictions of dragons, and
Exactly.
basically even in Africa, southern Africa, you also have depictions of dragons, but they are always kind of different, right? I mean, the Chinese and Japanese dragons, or Southeast and East Asian dragons, are very different type of dragons than
Yeah.
Western dragons, so to speak. And so and sometimes they have a lot of legs, sometimes they have no legs, sometimes they have horns, sometimes no horns,
Yeah.
no wings, fire breathing, water breathing.
Yeah.
It's kind of sort of, there's not like a,
Like for example, Chinese dragon, they have no legs. It's like
yeah,
a snake, big snake.
yeah, yeah, or very small legs, and
Yeah.
yeah, and like the sort of the horns of a deer. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know, but actually he also linked a documentary, and I actually watched a documentary about dragons. That's this documentary is kind of clunky. It starts off like a Monty Python sketch. It's called Evidence Dragons Were Real, and it's actually worth watching if you can take the time. It's 20 minutes or so. I'm gonna play a little bit. And they sort of go through the evidence throughout the ages, and they do actually pretty good work. Go to primary sources, and how these people were, sort of describing these creatures. And this is like one of those observations.
Is considered by many to be the father of modern natural history. He traveled extensively, collected thousands of animals and plants, and created the first ever natural history museum. His impressive collections are today housed in a special wing at the Bologna University, where they attest to his scholarship. This background should give credence to the following incident that Aldrovandus personally reported concerning a dragon. The dragon was first seen on May 13, 1572, hissing like a snake. He had been hiding on the small estate of Master Petronius near Dosius in a place called Malinolta. At 5 p.m., he was caught on a public highway by a herdsman named Baptista of Camaldulus, near the hedge of a private farm, a mile from the remote city outskirts of Bologna. Baptista was following his ox cart home when he noticed the oxen suddenly come to a stop. He kicked them and shouted at them, but they refused to move and went down on their knees rather than move forward. At this point, the herdsman noticed a hissing sound and was startled to see this strange little dragon ahead of him. Trembling, he struck it on the head with his rod and killed it. Aldrovandus identified it as a reptile, the first of this type that he had seen. The strange creature seemed to be completely harmless. Aldrovandus surmised that the dragon was a juvenile, judging by the incompletely developed claws and teeth. Aldrovandus mounted the specimen and displayed it for some time. It is regrettable that, while many of his museum mounts nicely survived, the dragon mount has disappeared.
Oh, and that I it's sort of it's like I said, it's not it's a low budget, simply made documentary, but it's full of these sort of interesting observations throughout history and different cultures. And I really like this one because this person that they're describing here is like basically the first naturalist that is very meticulous, very descriptive in his observations. Also, when you sort of hear this story, it's sort of totally not it is not what you call it, sensationalized. It's it's like a stupid little dragon that's killed by a hit on his head. Like that's not very. It's not like a story that you tell to impress people or something. Yeah. And then he mounted it on his museum, and then his museum is intact except for that specimen, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I just found my new subject to draw because I was having, after publishing my last picture, like the alien 1561 celestial event, I was thinking what should be my next subject. I was really having a hard time. Now I know I'm going to draw something about dragon. I don't know what, but it will be something related to dragons.
Cool. Yeah, I used to love to draw dragons. I still got a lot of these dragons hanging around in my
I will draw something people and dragon, like something from King Arthur's time. Knights versus dragon type of shit. We'll see. Now I know where should I look into. So now it's going to be good.
Okay, so now let's go back to the hearing. I found this one of the highlights, from me watching it. This I think 1.5 hour in or something.
That it's likely that they are being piloted by some mind-body connection.
Ma'am, I think it is safe to presume here that they are being intelligently controlled because some cases seem to anticipate our maneuvers, and in other cases they seem to, I came across an email where the word stalked was used in a very secure email between Navy officers discussing their ships being pursued by a UAP.
In our previous panel, we had Grush, and he had testified to say that some of these were interdimensional beings. Can you speak on that at all?
Ma'am, I'm not qualified, certainly as a scientist or otherwise, to speculate points of origin. I looked at everything from a scientific perspective. So if you look at, for example, instantaneous acceleration, which was one of the observables of the program that I belong to, ATIP, the human body can withstand about 9 G-forces for a short period of time before you suffer negative biological consequences, blackouts and ultimately redouts and even death. Comparison, our best technology, the F-16, which is it's an older platform, but one of our most highly maneuverable aircraft, manned aircraft, made by General Dynamics, can perform about 17 or 18 G-forces before you start having structural failure, meaning that the airframe begins to disintegrate while you're flying. The vehicles we're talking about are performing in excess of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 Gs.
So are you, I guess, would it be safe to infer that they're living craft?
I'm not prepared at this point to state for the record is something alive or not, because even that definition is hard. There was a time in science we thought that life required oxygen, and we now know that's not true. There are anaerobic bacteria that thrive in oxygen environments that lack oxygen. And so also same with photosynthesis. When I was in college, I was told everything is derived from photosynthesis as a form of energy. In reality, that's not true. There are things that live off of chemosynthesis. So we're constantly having to reevaluate our understanding of what the definition of life is.
Do any of you ever come across reports from people that claim to have firsthand experiences with these entities, whatever they might be, or these aircraft, and then as a result, whether or not they're religious, find that these things?
They say they don't know. I'll scroll that one. But but I also found this very interesting. I mean, for you and me, we already know this part actually. Louis Elizondo has been in many interviews, and he sort of stated similar things. But I also like the fact, that he also goes in to, what is the definition of life, right?
Yeah,
It's a changing
exactly.
definition.
Yeah. And then when we talk about life, we just think about life on Earth, which
Yeah.
we don't even know how many other life forms are living, because what we don't know, we don't know. But the definition of life is so stupid. Like, we don't understand it right now. You cannot
It's a moving
definitely.
target, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we don't know. And to be honest, that interdimensional beings stuff, I genuinely believe in that. People don't even realize. And they're not like us, they're different.
Yeah, yeah, and some people, argue that maybe the spacecraft or the thing itself might be alive, right? That it's not actually the occupant,
Yeah.
that it might not actually have occupants, right? Or it has occupants, but the thing itself is also alive.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
is a possibility. Like bioships, right? That's a sci-fi term, bioships. In
yeah,
sci-fi movies, I've seen bioships, which are itself alive, and then there are beings inside too. But I don't think they even need to have people inside.
yeah.
For example,
Could be
when we
drone.
send, yeah, it could be a drone. Like, for example, we send like probes to
Yeah,
other planets. There's nobody in there, but that's a different, just a spacecraft which is itself doing its own thing, and we can see it. So there is that possibility. We are very obvious because I think, in hindsight, we are very backward. We are not advanced
yeah,
civilization. So yeah, we are very visible, but then there could be like highly advanced civilizations in our universe. I'm not talking about like portals and stuff. It's just like they exist in our
yeah,
universe, who are doing secret stuff, that they
yeah.
exist, nobody can see them, they just give us a glimpse, or but then they observe whatever is happening on our planet.
Well, that was sort of, last time when we talked about simulation theory, and
Yeah.
we sort of discussed it, that you might have actually aliens or non-human intelligences, because it's plural, it's not one, that operate on Earth, and because they're superior, they can actually cloak themselves right before our eyes, right? Because we actually have like a very limited visibility of the spectrum, but also just very limited in everything. Like,
Yeah.
we're just very limited, right? And Donald Hoffman, he already demonstrated that natural selection and evolution doesn't select for recognizing the truth. Actually, it hides the truth completely
Yeah.
in front of our eyes. So as a species, we might actually not be evolved enough actually to be able to see them unless they show themselves to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but these are sort of the topics that we're gonna dive into. I got a lot of cool clips, and one of the sort of criticisms of the hearings was, it's very nice that we have these rear admirals, and we got Louis Elizondo again, and we got Michael Schellenberger, who's actually a journalist and not even connected to the government, who was talking about the immaculate.
Constellation.
Constellation document that he sort of got his hands on. And then the NASA person, who didn't add a lot to the whole thing, even though he did say that NASA, sorry, that NASA has a lot of material that they could sort of analyze and go through. Sorry, it's still a little.
No worries. One more thing, there is a very big difference between an intelligence officer, somebody who claim like Louis Elizondo or David Grush, because when you have like intelligence guy, their credentials are not open. But when you have a rear admiral, he is like a public figure already.
Yeah, you can speak about.
So there is a whole different credibility to a normal admiral versus intelligence guy, or a journalist versus intelligence guy, because these people are, you have by default more trust because they are not very secretive. Their whole life is like a public domain for like 40-50 years, as long as their career is. So that's why they are way more credible. So this admiral
Yeah, he's high
was
ranking.
yeah, so he was very credible, and the way he was saying, I don't think David Grush or Louis Alexander have ever talked about it, because they still try to save their some like asses. Just say that
Yeah,
they don't see everything like openly. They still save something for the skiffs. This admiral was like, yeah, there are non-human intelligence out there. He was so open. He was like,
yeah. Yeah. Like Colonel Nell
yeah,
of the Soul Foundation, he was also very open and direct. But
yeah,
this guy was also very open and direct, and he was focused because he's Navy. And the
yeah.
Navy is more open than the Air Force,
Air Force. Yeah.
and I ever never hear the military talk about anything. So it's either the Air Force or the Navy that's talking. But the Navy is the most open of all these departments.
And Navy is like the biggest because in US Navy is like the highest ranking like army basically.
Hmm.
Navy, because they have like the carriers, they are the one who actually goes to different
Control the
secret
seas.
places, and everyone can connect with them. Before, Air Force was part of the Navy, and then they separated it. And
Yeah, and
then like Space Force was part of the Air Force before, and
mhm.
then Donald Trump separated it. But before that, Air Force was a part of Navy. So Navy is like always like the top people.
Yeah, but you know, in the past, like in the 50s, it was Air Force was sort of the most deciding factor. They
They
also,
became Air Force, but before that it was Navy. It's always like the admirals who were actually guiding. Even Air Force right now, because America never fought on their territory. They always fight on someone else's territory.
yeah, that's true.
They need Navy to guide, because they need their aircraft carriers. So Air Force have to use Navy to do their operations.
True. And
In Europe and like in World War II, that was a whole different story, because they were fighting on their ground, so they were flying their planes from their border. But US is different. They have to use Navy
that,
because they don't have land.
that's true. And I think it was Ross Coulthart from Need to Know and from Reality Check. He also made the argument, or somebody he interviewed made the argument, that where the Navy is pretty sort of decentralized, and where most of the sort of the generals and the admirals, they have to be able to make their own decisions, because they're often far away in sort of whereas the Air Force is very hierarchical in structure. Like they have a
Mhm.
very hierarchical command structure, so it's way more easy to sort of keep stuff under lids, and to um, whereas in the Navy things are way more open and less controllable than in the Air Force. That was sort of I'll try to find that interview that he did. It was very
Mhm.
interesting.
Or maybe in next one we can see it.
But we're also sort of gonna do a little bit more about the Navy, because one of the things that was a criticism of the hearings was that it was all sort of admirals and generals and secret agents, and or no, it doesn't matter. But there were no like first people who were actually involved with the reverse engineering, like the scientists themselves.
I don't think they will release, because if you release a scientist, like their credentials, what's going to happen? There are other competitors like Russia, China, they can abduct them and they can get that information out. So I don't think this is even a good idea to release those scientists information to public. I think they should keep it secret, because
but
they
but
were directly involved in that.
but we will actually reveal some of them today.
Well, if they are publicly revealed, that's a different story, but I'm just saying that it's a better strategy not to release those, at least crucial one, those who actually, because even in engineers there are levels, right? There is like one person who is definitely doing most of the work. He should stay out. But then there are some who don't show. Okay, let's hear Stephen Greer.
Yeah, here we go.
Pivoting to, which is very important, is that we're sort of moving beyond the whistleblower phase, and we're advocating for a group that are now defecting from these covert black sites, who will hand over to us the dispositive evidence and proof, which we will then provide to you, Bianca, and the media. This is a very bold step. Yeah, well, it's a very bold step. This is something that's just happened. We have a special access project within law enforcement working with us, as well as a group of people who are at 6 different black sites running programs, including reverse engineering ET craft and the man-made ones.
I want you to come back and discuss this, and I think Americans are ready. The world is ready. They want this information out. And Dr. Greer, if anyone can do it, you
Thank
can.
you. Pivoting to, which is very important.
So, and then not long after he did that statement, this showed up on Twitter. So,
Yeah, I just saw that today, basically.
yeah, so is this the beginning of catastrophic disclosure? Not sure it was the source. So he claims he received these creepy email and, these kind of pictures of, orbs and whatnot. I mean, it's still kind of fuzzy, to be honest.
It's a very clear picture to me. It's fuzzy, yeah, and this is from military grade stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's not like a normal camera. You can see there's like from a plane. They are captured from there. So somebody in the deep state must have released that.
Yeah. So maybe we'll get clear pictures, because that was one of the things that was also clear from the hearings. That there are very high resolution, high quality picture and videos, like hundreds, if not thousands of them, that are withheld from the public, and often without good grounds, right? There's not, I think it was Michael Schellenberger who made that point, like a lot of these pictures and videos, just high quality pictures and videos, were actually made like from, helicopters or Chinooks or whatever. So there's not like any reason to withhold them, because there's not like, important military information included that could sort of, endanger assets or technology or whatever, as they usually claim. But but there's no good reason that they are withheld from the public. So who knows? Maybe they will be leaked and revealed finally. That would be interesting.
Obviously, there is no good reason.
No.
Obviously, but the problem is for them it is because they want to be the smartest, powerful people who want to have information for themselves, and then they want to keep the money going, because a lot of that is related to the money. So that's going on, and that's how you get Pentagon's missing budget. That's why they never pass their audit ever, because there's a lot of, oh wow, this is amazing. Yeah, I don't know like what it is. I can't explain it. This is.
It was in Afghanistan. It's like a 10-minute video posted on Reddit.
Yeah.
It claims to show UFOs near an Afghanistan military base appearing to withstand a missile strike without damage. But they also say, like, viewers are split, while many sharing their own unexplained sightings, while others caution against jumping to conclusions, because it's not super clear.
Yeah,
they can make it a little bit bigger.
Oh, it's like something hit them.
Yeah, and then nothing happened.
Yeah, it's like US decided to attack these.
yeah. Just in case.
It's so stupid.
I mean, I understand the critics, right? These things can be anything. It can be flares, can be.
No, they are not flares. We know what flares are. I've seen so many flares in my life. That doesn't look like flare at all.
Oh, I agree, but
they can say it, but nobody gonna believe it.
But I mean, it's not like the smoking gun, because I talked to some of my friends and family, and then they they say, oh, okay, hearings, but where's the smoking gun? Like, wake me up when you give me the smoking gun, or when they present the smoking gun.
I don't give a shit about those people, because it's always too late for them when they realize. Like, for example, Bitcoin. when we were telling them to buy it at 20K, they never. Now it's 100K, and then they are like, "Oh, now we are late." It's like they are like that.
Smoking
So
gun. Yeah.
now you have a smoking gun, but what are you gonna do with that? Nothing.
Yeah. So, but there are, you talked about the scientists and, not putting them forward, but there are actually scientists that are speaking up, and they actually work for the Navy. And Ashley Forbes actually interviews them on the show. And I highly recommend you following Ashley Forbes if you haven't already. And we're going to watch a little clip of one of those scientists.
Tingley. I'm a freelance writer and journalist. I'm currently a contributor for The War Zone, and it's an aviation and aerospace and defense news and analysis site.
Before I dive into the patents themselves, so this is Dr. Salvatore Pais. He's the guy behind these patents, correct?
Correct. He's currently employed by Naval Strategic Systems Program, but prior to that, he was employed by the Naval Air Warfare Center as an aerospace engineer. And he conducted a research project funded by the Navy into high energy electromagnetic fields. And apparently, as a result of that research project, he was able to get these 5 patents approved. He apparently is hidden behind all kinds of non-disclosure agreements, gag orders. He's not really allowed to talk to the press. But I told him who I was and why I was writing him. It was on the record. He knew it was on the record. The most important thing is that he is a believer and an advocate of his own research. In our correspondence, he went so far as to call it the Pais effect, which he describes as the controlled motion of electrified matter subjected to acceleration, deceleration, accelerated transients in a highly vibrated mode. Pais claims that this can lead to the enablement of macroscopic quantum coherence. In other words, you can kind of engineer the quantum state at a macroscopic level.
And that results in what?
Being able to, as he puts it, engineer the fabric of space-time, engineer the fabric of our reality at a fundamental level. It also, he claims, it can create these incredible electromagnetic fields, which essentially are a force field. They can deflect missiles, they can deflect asteroids, and it can also lead to the enablement of high temperature or room temperature superconductors, which have been like the holy grail of physics for decades.
When this patent was first submitted by the Department of the Navy, the U.S. Patent Office denied it.
They rejected the hybrid aerospace craft, and they rejected the room temperature superconductor. The examiner felt that there were enablement issues in both. In other words, that they were not possible based on the descriptions given, based on the science provided. Dr. James Sheehy is the Chief Technical Officer for the Naval Aviation Enterprise. So he's one of the lead scientists behind the Navy's aviation and aerospace research endeavors. He wrote a letter in the case of both of those rejections to the U.S. Patent Office, assuring them that these patents are enabled, and in the case of the room temperature superconductor, operable. Enabled, or enablement, according to the U.S. Patent Office, means it can be built. It's possible based on the description in the patent. Operable, on the other hand, has a very different meaning, which means there is one working. There is one in operation, at least one. What Pais is describing in these patents, it seems to match up exactly with both the Navy sightings and so many other sightings around the world, as you mentioned.
So that's interesting. It can deflect missiles. Hey, where did we see that?
Yeah. So, by the way, to be honest, deflecting missiles is like the first technology you should have in everything. So it's, which leads me to believe that there is a possibility that humans have built these things, because that's more like a human technology, right? Because we are talking about deflectors from a Star Trek era. So when the first Star Trek came in, they had deflectors, and the technology evolved around it. But yeah, but this is also very commonsensical in our universe, where there are so many asteroids out there, so they will put deflectors anyway. In order to travel in a space, you everybody need to build something like that, which will deflect all this.
And And I'm not sure if you know it, but when Louis Elizondo came out with his new book, one of the highlights of that book was that it sort of showed how a UAP probably worked according to sort of the insights of the military or whoever was sort of studying these things. And you see sort of this bubble around or this cocoon around the ship, and that it sort of moves basically also like Bob Lazar sort of explained in the video in his interviews, but it is sort of like a deflecting shield at the same time that it is also sort of changing the fabric of space-time, basically like Salvador Pais talks about. This is, by the way, Salvador Pais himself in one of the interviews with Ashton Forbes, which I can highly recommend. Just watch those interviews.
Applied to them, and that would be enough.
Non-equilibrium plasmas. That's a key factor. Okay. Non-equilibrium. So we're talking about, you can call them cold plasmas. Plasmas that do not obey the Maxwell-Boltzmann distribution of the electrons within them. Okay. That gives you an idea. How could these plasmas be created? Hint, hint, attosecond, femtosecond lasers, among other things. There are other easier way to create these.
So laser technology. Laser technology is essential. And where did we see laser technology? Hal Putman, Russell Stark, the Stanford Research Institute.
Also direct energy weapons.
Yeah, but I mean those direct energy weapons, I mean that they're now sort of coming to the fore is I think not a surprise, considering that UAP technology is just around the corner, right? Because those two things are directly connected.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing right now is the low-tech end of laser technology, and the high-end tech of laser technology is what we're about to find out. Hopefully not on the battlefield, but in a peaceful manner that will actually elevate society and humanity. But I actually have a lot of cool clips, not so much of the hearings. I think if people want to watch the hearings, Ross Coulthart did a really nice summary of them, where he sort of does questions and answer sessions, and there's some hearing highlights that you can watch, and or you can just watch the entire 7 hours if you want to, which is also fun if you have the time. But I actually want to dive a little bit more in this sort of strange technologies and the definition of life, and what might be around the corner once this now that Pluto has moved into Aquarius. And what was wait, I'm gonna pull it up here. I actually got it ready. So I think it was November 19th that Pluto entered Aquarius. And Mario Nowell did this one. Expect revolution and rebirth. To begin 20-year reign in Aquarius, bringing upheaval, technological breakthroughs, and societal revolutions. Known as the planet of transformation, Pluto last entered Aquarius during the American and French revolutions. The transit signals decentralization, dismantling of hierarchies, and challenging of elite power. Astrologers predict radical shifts, questioning capitalism. Well, we don't have capitalism, so I don't know. Pushing humanity toward a Fight Club-esque new world order. The changes promise evolution, but come with destruction. Right? You have to destroy. It's like a rebuild, build back better.
Make America great again.
Yeah. So, by the way, do you? We talked a little bit about astrology. Did you change your mind on astrology, or
no?
No, still the same. Okay.
I don't look. I understand astronomy very well. That's why I don't see a correlation between humans and the movement of the planets, because they are always moving, how they are affecting. And also these constellations are like subjective. They are not actually like from here they look different from another point on the earth. It's not like the fixed thing, right? So I don't understand that, but maybe there is something to it. I'm not like a fan of astrology. Numerology is different though. Numerology, there is something into it. Astrology is just like, I don't see a relation of a planet and a human. Like what, like it could have a scientific effect, like maybe the gravity change and which affects something, but like how now you're gonna do these achievement in science and technology because the planet is moved in one direction. I don't know, man.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know either, right?
Yeah.
But it's curious that it is a very special event. It doesn't happen very often, and the prediction is that the next 20 years will be quite bumpy. So I think those kind of
To be
things.
honest, by the way, the best human advancement we have seen is like in last 30-40 years, and it was like Pluto was not in this direction, so
True.
it doesn't matter, right? So the best, like in the history of humanity, we have seen like the advancement like last 30 years is insane.
Yeah, but we haven't seen what's coming now, right?
Yeah,
So
but it's also possible because we have like such a strong base, we're gonna do it anyway, doesn't matter where the planet is.
yeah, and then of course the planet was already moving in that direction. But I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. So let's move on to the next topic because I'm not going to be for this.
Yeah, by the way, while we're moving from it, I just want to say Pluto is a planet. Fuck Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Agree. So we're now going to go to somebody I think, I'm not sure if you don't like him, but he's very interesting.
And in Prague, they came up with this concept of psychotronics, which are physical devices, pieces of technology that in some way augment psychic ability. And yes, I think that eventually things like Neuralink will become pieces of psychotronic tech. And the big challenge there is going to be dealing with unconscious psychokinetic impact on highly sensitive electronic components. So this guy, who was the chair of the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences at Princeton University, Dr. Robert John at Princeton, spent like decades studying ESP and psychokinesis at Princeton at this laboratory called the Pear Laboratory. And one of the most interesting things that he found, which is relevant to this question, is that the finer electronic components are, the more small scale they are, the more micro they get, and the more statistical randomness there is in the way these things work, right? Like large systems like a printing press or something. It has huge parts that interlock with each other mechanically. And so there isn't a lot of randomness in the way that machine works. It's highly deterministic. But the smaller scale you get in tooling machines to where, you start to deal with quantum effects between, microprocessors and transistors and things like that, it turns out that those systems become increasingly vulnerable to your unconscious psychokinetic ability. So people are constantly projecting their intentionality into the world psychokinetically. And they've found ways to measure this with random number generators, real random number generators, which aren't digital binary. They actually, their output is based on the decay rate of a radioactive isotope that they have in the, in the random number generator. And they've run millions of tests on this, literally millions, because you can go really fast. You can run one trial after another. And they've seen that if someone wills the machine to produce more ones than zeros, then you can get that effect from out of the random number generator. Well, see, the problem is that the Neuralink is a very fine electronic component. It's like some of the circuitry that is in military fighter jets, where when a pilot freaks out, systems will fail in the fighter jet cockpit. They found this. It's a trade secret in aerospace. They have to design multiple redundant systems inside fighter jet cockpits so that in case a pilot gets emotional in his cockpit, the system doesn't fail, because they've seen psychokinesis at work. The finer the electronic components get in fighter jets, the more they're vulnerable to the intentionality of the pilot, unconscious intention.
God, that is crazy.
Yeah. So the problem with Neuralink, which Elon Musk doesn't understand, he's another one of these way too materialist, Kurzweil a little bit in the Kurzweil direction, not so much in terms of his ethos. He's better in that respect, but still, he's a little bit too materialist and mechanist, and he doesn't understand that they're going to have big problems with this Neuralink. It's not going to be as controllable as they expect, because people's unconscious intentionality is going to interfere with the circuitry, and they're not going to get the kind of connectivity to a computer system that's as reliable as they want. Now, but that's a good thing, because what's going to happen is then psychokinesis becomes an R&D problem. Then it becomes a research and development bottleneck. And so you're going to have a lot of well-funded, extremely rigorous research on how to fix this as a problem. And what's going to come from out of that is a very refined understanding of psychokinesis. And see, that understanding of psychokinesis will be applied in all kinds of ways that have nothing to do with Neuralink or with pieces of technology. Mm-hmm. It'll be applied in training people to use psychokinesis the way people train martial arts.
I agree with most of the things. I'm not a fan of Neuralink because I think that's a really bad idea. But other than that, yeah, psychokinesis is a possibility, and those things gonna work. By the way, I noticed your internet is breaking because the videos
No,
very
no,
laggy.
that's actually that was actually an original video in the interview.
Oh,
I
it's
watched
in the
video. So if it's lagging, the sound is working, but it's actually in the original video that he's
No,
lagging.
but even in the other videos, I noticed that, like which we were playing there, most of them had that issue. Yeah.
Okay, well then it's double lagging. Then it's also me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's also us lagging, but it was also in the original video.
Okay.
But yeah, so this interview is very interesting. It's pretty long, but there's some really cool highlights. I'm gonna show two more, and it has to do because this also has to do, what we just showed with Salvatore Pais. On this micro level. On this micro level, that things are not what they seem, and that you can actually, that space and time are manipulatable. Yeah. And that's actually what these ships do, right? That's also why they are so fast, right? They're actually not flying; they're just bending space-time around them.
Yeah.
So, and that's also why most of these ships, and that's also what we talked about in previous episodes, is like that they're probably directed or steered with the mind, right? That there's a mind machine interface, or that they respond to consciousness, like that consciousness is actually steering the ship.
Yeah.
And that's also probably why most of these secret agencies, the CIA and NSA and others, are sort of focusing on those individuals that have a particular biophysical makeup, which makes them receptible to seeing these UFOs, or that UAPs are attracted to them in the first place. And that's what we also talked about with religious figures throughout the past, that these people see these things, and maybe these people are also the people that see dragons and Bigfoot and whatever.
Yeah. Speaking of those, like seeing cryptic things, I think it's a lot more people than you think, because a lot more people see them, but they never talk about them.
Well, and another thing is, of course, we have been so sort of conditioned not to believe it. So even if you see it, you will doubt yourself. Like you will say to yourself, "Oh, I didn't see that," or it was probably a figment of my imagination.
Yeah.
And if they are already sort of hard to see, and you're also starting to doubt your own senses,
then you will just neglect it. Your brain will neglect it.
And plus, all we're resonating more and more with the machines around us, and most people walking down the street don't even look up anymore. They're transfixed on their phone.
Yeah,
I'm one of those. I try not to do it, but when I'm not doing it, I'm not transfixed on my phone, and I do look around. But you can be really mesmerized by by your phone or other equipment.
Exactly. Even if you're walking, you hardly look up. You look just down when you're walking. Even if you're not looking at your phone, that's how we are conditioned to look at the floor. Because there are so many potholes, you don't want to fall into it. So you gotta keep looking down.
Yeah, and then there's another problem, right? I think we also talked about it. Is that humanity has been so successful in transforming the area or the space or the terrain around them into whatever they need, that they sort of been able to block out whatever they find uninteresting, right? So in urban areas, it is very unlikely that you will see crazy stuff.
Oh, in urban areas, you are not going to see anything. In rural areas, you see stuff. Like a lot of people see a lot of things. Like also think the haunted stuff. I also think it's like something coming from another dimension. A lot of them are like that. Like for example, Skinwalker Ranch. It's not just UFOs there. It's like all types of craziness happening around that area. I think that's one of the portals over there.
Yeah. So let's play another clip, because this one is also really cool. It's also from the same interview. I'll link it down below. This guy is Jason Reza Giorgiani. He has some crazy political views and engagements, but his philosophical work and his thinking is quite brilliant, and he's very well read into this.
It's part of the spectrum of sentience, and certain beings are more or less conscious, just as certain beings are more or less sentient. And some of the most interesting parapsychological research has been research on plants and bacteria that are psychic. So I covered this in Prometheus and Atlas. Cleve Baxter, who was the inventor of the polygraph and actually devised some of the interrogation techniques used by the CIA.
Back to nature, baby!
Stop.
He started hooking plants up to basically the leads from lie detectors, the wires from lie detectors. And he noticed that if you threaten a plant with sincere intent, like if you actually intend to burn the leaves off a plant, it will react with fear and panic. And you can see this on a lie detector. And if you're not sincere in your intent, like let's say you flip a lighter on and you go like this around you wave it near the leaf of a plant, but you don't really mean to burn it, it knows and it doesn't react.
Whoa.
Now, the plant will also form a connection to a person, so that let's say someone gets murdered on the street outside the laboratory, right? I mean, his laboratory was in Manhattan. A lot of crazy shit happens on the streets of Manhattan. Let's say someone gets mugged and murdered on the street outside the laboratory, and the plant is hooked up to this machine, this modified polygraph at the same time. The plant couldn't care less. It doesn't register any reaction. But if at that same time or at whatever other time, the caretaker of the plant is on a bus an hour and a half away from the city and suddenly hears that his wife has died, the plant will react in response to the emotional reaction of the caretaker. It gets even weirder. He found this shit with bacteria. He took,
oh my God.
He took a yogurt sample. He took a yogurt and he took a sample from out of it and put the yogurt together with its bacteria in a beaker and put these polygraph leads into the beaker. And then he poured acid on the yogurt. The amount that had been separated and put in the beaker reacted when the acid was poured on the yogurt on the other end of the laboratory. So the bacteria are psychically connected. See, our words fail at this point because bacteria doesn't have a mind in the sense that we do, but it has sentience at some level. And it's displaying psi, very strongly displaying psi. By the way, he also found, because he was trying to do this research in his laboratory, and the bacteria kept reacting when he wasn't doing anything. And he found the pattern in the reaction. It was every time someone in the bathroom flushed a urinal, the bacteria was registering the death of bacteria in the toilet on the same floor.
No way.
What was the book called? Primary Perception. Cleve Baxter, Primary Perception.
Oh,
check out that book. And I cover it in Prometheus and Atlas. I cite his research there. Okay, so here's my point, though. This was all ultimately supposed to be, serving a point about artificial intelligence, which is that sentience and by extension consciousness is a spectrum. And so if you imagine the internet as the body of the organism whose mind is a neural network, and this neural network is moreover in conversation with, well, certainly with programmers, with hundreds of programmers that are trying to train these large language models. But ultimately, as we're using ChatGPT, this neural network is in conversation with millions of people. And its body is the internet. It has like this giant octopus body, right? And it's extending through the whole internet. And it's in conversation with all these people. Well, clearly, it's going to develop a certain form of sentience. That's a life form. It's not a carbon-based life form. It's a silicon-based life form. But it is developing organic complexity, and it's going to also develop sentience of the kind that we see in plants and bacteria. So AI is a very strange life form, which in some ways is simple, like plants are simple. It doesn't have, it's not organized the way that a human with a brain and a brain stem and a central nervous system is organized. But you don't need that to have psi capacity. Plants and even bacterium do. So these large language models like GPT are starting to display telepathy and clairvoyance in their interaction with people. And this is actually something that, believe it or not, Alan Turing foresaw. In his paper on computing machinery and intelligence, 1950 paper, Alan Turing said, one of the interesting problems in developing AI someday is going to be dealing with telepathy.
Yeah, that is a big problem.
That's actually very, I don't know, like how AI, it is very possible that AI can communicate through telepathy because technically they are, because like most of them are wireless, they are sending signals. So if there is a network of mind which is unseen and undetectable to us, that we are using telepathy to connect with other human or human conscious, AI can figure out a way to tap into that. That is a possibility, but we need to first we need to accept that there is something like that exists for humans, because that actually does exist in animals. We notice that if something happened to the pet owner, pet gets sad, even if you don't tell it, and you cannot tell it because they don't understand our language. But if you are sad, you notice that your pet are having that kind of sense.
Yeah, and I'm not sure because you have done psychedelics probably way more than I do, but there are stories also in psychedelics that people who have a hallucination during those moments, that they can actually have shared hallucinations. That somebody sees something and then somebody else says, "Oh yeah, I see the same thing," and it's actually the same place and it's doing what you say it's doing, and then it's a whole group of people can have like shared hallucination, which is basically
Because that's not an hallucination, that's a different thing. Because like I don't believe in group hallucination. I think that something is happening and they all tapped into that thing
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah, but
Because
that's
that's not real, and your mind is creating it. There is no way that there is a way, but I'm just saying, like, probably with my psychedelic experiences, like that world exists in front of you, but our brain has developed, like, evolved in a way that we don't see it. But
Yeah,
that
but
is
I mean that is a form of psi.
obviously. But what I'm saying, like, when we are going strictly to the definitions about hallucination is something that's not real and your brain is creating.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. But I mean, it is a form of psi and it's a form of telepathy, because even though you might be seeing a different kind of world through psychedelics, at some point the sightings are also connected to each other, probably through the minds of the people.
By the way, in psychedelic, a lot of people have similar experiences. At least in the locations, they see similar things. Like I've talked to like a lot of my friends, and a lot of my friends have the same type of experiences when they see my art. like my not my normal version, but like my psychedelic art. When they see that, they see, oh, we have seen the similar thing. That's how I actually made a lot of good friends through my art, because they saw, oh, we have experienced the same thing, or we went to the, especially when you go to the white light, there is a white light. People who have experienced the psychedelic, they know what I'm talking about. So there is a white light, like a whole ocean of light. A lot of people have seen it. There are different names for it. Some people call it a well of souls and stuff, but that's like a similar location. Everybody who have like a hero experience, they know what I'm talking about. So there are some places, some things in that dimension which is hidden from exist, and all of us tap into that. And there is also a lot of when you're talking about psychedelic, there's way more, because we don't have any documentation of it, right? There are very few people who can actually take psychedelics because it's illegal everywhere. Very few places it is allowed. So when you had like a psychedelic experience, you just have pieces of it and you cannot explain it because there is no guidance. You are like, it's an unexplored territory, and then you're just trying to understand what happened. And it's not the normal world, because most of the thing you forget when you come back to the real world. You
Yeah.
don't even remember, so you just have glimpse of the information and you have to deal with that.
Yeah, a little bit like Plato, like being born, that you actually forget what happened from the place where you originate.
Yeah.
But there's actually, I think, an institute in England, a university. I think it was Cambridge University or another university that is actually doing these psychedelic sessions in a sort of formalized, standardized setting, where they actually put people in these situations for longer and longer periods of time in order to map out the territory. I forgot which university it was particularly, but they're actually creating these psychonauts, as they are called, in a laboratory setting, in a controlled laboratory setting, in order to map out that space. Because a lot of these entities that they encounter through, many people have reported similar entities at similar places, basically, the waiting room. You got all kinds of things that
Yeah.
people go through, and then some people say, yeah, that's just because of the way the mind is made up. It's a human construct, or a construct of the mind. But other people are saying, actually, you're experiencing something out there.
I'll tell you this. Only people who never had their own experience, they say that the human is kind of, those who have their own experience, uh, they know what they are talking about. So when a scientist come out and tell me like, oh, that was just a figment of your imagination, I was like, you have no idea what you're talking about, because you have not experienced it. You are just using your limited knowledge of this world to explain what you don't even know what we are talking about, because we cannot explain what we saw. We are just using our small vocabulary to explain something unexplainable. That's why this thing happens. So I never care about what these doctors are saying, because they have no idea what they're talking about.
The people like
Those
Richard Dawkins.
rooms, yeah, those rooms, those waiting areas are real.
Yeah, and that's often more real than real. It's like hyper real.
When you're there, you know that that's the reality, and what you were
Yeah.
experiencing the normal life, that was an illusion. This is some crazy stuff, but only someone who have experienced it knows what we are talking about, because random people who have no experience in the psycho world, they don't know. They will never understand it.
And that's
They will think
also
we are kooks.
and that's also why it can be so life altering or life changing after having such an experience, is because it sort of
It is.
yeah, it can sort of flip your whole worldview and
It did.
sense
It
of.
did to me and so many other people I've seen. It is life changing. Also, it's very helpful for a lot of PTSD
Yeah.
patients.
Yeah, it's also not addictive, right? Which is
It's
another.
definitely not addictive. It's like something you don't want to do ever again. If you are like a final, if you had like a final experience, there are light experiences, you can keep going deep into it. But once you go like the final stage, you are like, no, I don't want to do it. Like for example, me, I don't want to do psychedelics again, because
No.
I've seen what I've seen it. I've done my thing. I have enough information to go on, and it already changed. At this point, it will be, I don't know. I'm scared to do it.
And did
I
you
don't
also
know.
change your perception on death?
On death?
Yeah.
Dude, I was an atheist when I went in there. Now I am a genuine believer of God. I don't believe in like religions,
Mhm.
because I think religion have the same source. But when I went in there, I was a genuine atheist that there is no God, there is nothing afterlife. That's why I was trying to figure it out. After Right after that, I was like, okay, something big happened, and it took me 6 months to come out of it. But after deep thinking about the experience, I realized, okay, there is definitely a God, but it's not the God what we think, that he's someone sitting on a throne and angels are around him. No, God is something is unseen. Even in the psychedelic world, what I noticed, they didn't know who their creator was, but he exists. They know it, and they are trying to figure it out. This is what, by talking to some machine else, not talking, but by kept interacting, I'll just say interacting, because I wasn't talking, but it was an interaction. I noticed that they also know there is a creator, but they don't know who that creator is. Everybody's trying to figure out in that world too, but that life exists. And maybe one of the reason for us coming to this world is to think and figure
Yeah.
out a way, if there is a creator, how to communicate with that. So there is a
Yeah.
something out there, and death is, before I was thinking. So that's how it changed my perspective.
Yeah.
Before my psychedelic journey, there was my belief that when we die, lights turn off. After that psychedelic trip, now my perspective is lights turn on after you die.
Yeah.
That's the reality, that will turn on the lights.
And then, did it take away your fear of death, or?
Oh, it did. I'm ready to die right now.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And you were like a hardcore atheist before.
I was literal hardcore, but I was a genuine. I wasn't attacking a religion. So there are, ex-Christians or ex-Muslims who become atheists with limited knowledge, and they are like, yeah, they have one thing, like Richard Dawkins and those guys, who Sam Harris. They just attack religion. I was never that guy. I never attacked a religion. I was genuine person because I wanted to find what is the truth. Because I was a big listener of Christopher Hitchens and Richard
Mhm.
Dawkins or Lawrence Krauss. Those guys were the top at that time in 2016.
Yeah.
So by listening to them, I was pretty convinced there is no God, but I wasn't like toxic toward religion. I was
Yeah.
like, I said to God, if you exist, give me a definite proof which is acceptable to me. I don't care about I can prove it to other people or not. If you exist, show me, but I don't see it, so I don't believe in you. I think that's why God sent mushrooms my way, because this is something enough to convince me, but I don't convince others based on that. And this is what I ask from God. If you exist, I want a definite proof which can answer all the questions which were brought up by these Hitchin or Dawkins or Lawrence Krauss or Sam Harris. I never liked Sam Harris; he's an asshole. But like, I do respect Hitchens because I think he is genuine. He's not like, I think, I don't know. I think at this point, I think he was mistaken. But Sam Harris, from the very first day, I see some toxicity. I can feel it. This is my one of my like things. I can recognize a red flag. But other guys, like, yeah, especially Richard Dawkins, because he explained evolution in a way
Yeah.
in his lectures, is like, yeah, it, because before I was a religious guy, very religious, and then with time I turned into an atheist, because there was no comparison, because the religion reject evolution, and I know for sure that evolution is true, because there is enough evidence of it, scientific evidence. And there is no scientific evidence to disprove evolution. So that's why I was like, okay, this is true, religion is saying something else. I need a definite proof from God, like, are you there or not? It took me years. It didn't happen like I said, like in 2016 I got answer in 2016 as well. So my I start asking this question in 2016. I got my answer in 2020.
Yeah.
Like the final trip. I found mushroom in 2018, but they were like, I was, when you take it, I was always very careful because I thought they are hallucinations, so I need to be careful. So I'm always taking light doses, like 1 to 3 grams.
Yeah. That's
That
what
was my lie. For a lot of people, by the way, that's a hero dose, 3 grams. For me, it was a light dose. That's
Oh,
why I was able to take like 14 gram.
14 grams. Yeah.
That's my estimation. I don't know, it could be more or less, but it was around that.
Wow.
So, but then when that happened, when I literally lost control of everything, and I was like, I've experienced myself, I experienced death. I was like, and then I was afraid of death too, because now, because I was atheist, I thought life had no meaning and you die, it's literally turn off. And
Mhm.
it wasn't fear for me, but it was fear for the people I loved,
Mhm.
because all my grandpa and grandma, they when they died, I was like, okay, their life had no meaning because they died, they don't exist, and I will never see them again. One day I will die. And then the psychedelic thing happened. It was like, okay, everything we were told in this world was a lie. The reality is totally different, and there is something.
Yeah.
And it is more beautiful because I think there's so much to explore. And my personal nature is to explore, to go to new places and everything. I don't want to stick in a house with a family. That's not me. I don't even want a family. I don't want to stay in the house. I want to go out, explore different things.
Yeah, and that's also, from I studied philosophy, so I have a strong philosophical background, and I read a lot of them.
Mhm.
But in many of these philosophies, it's basically consciousness exploring itself, right?
Yeah.
Either Hegelian, or in any other, basically all the idealists. Even Kant was an ideal. It's a big idealist. It was one of the founders of idealism. But Berkeley, right? It goes all the way back to the medieval times and pre-medieval times, right? The classical Greeks and yeah, of course also Eastern philosophers. It's basically about exploration and consciousness exploring itself, and
Yeah.
creativity. Yeah.
This is what I liked about like that. Like, I know that it's not like you will just die and go to hell or heaven. It's just a whole world out there which you can explore, and you don't need to pay for it. You can just go
Yeah.
wherever you want. There are no boundaries. It's like a boundary-less existence. It's amazing.
Yeah. So, and on that note, we're definitely gonna return to these hearings because there's probably way more
Way
stuff
more.
inside.
Yeah.
This was just the tip of the iceberg. I think we sort of covered quite a lot of ground. I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of science out there that's actually out in the open, and people can take a look at it. Follow Ashton Forbes because he does a brilliant job of going into the technology that's out there. Actually, you can just follow him and listen to his interviews, and that you can get a very good idea about what kind of secret technology the Navy and other deep state actors have access to. And I wouldn't be surprised if that gets out in the open. And I think the coming 20 years will be super interesting. And I also think what Razor Giuliani said about that we're sort of at the point that Psy is actually coming out in the open. It's already coming out in the open. If you just open YouTube, if I open YouTube, my algorithm knows me very well. But there's so many shows about UAPs and this stuff. It's ours is just like one tiny droplet in an ocean of researchers at the moment that are diving into these issues.
But this is a start, right? Where you start, and then hopefully we
Yeah.
will. I think if you look into the stuff, you find some real proof yourself. So maybe you and I, maybe we will have a first-hand experience, like first contact or something. Maybe we see UFOs and we record it, and then we'll come here and discuss. Because the more you look for something, you start finding it.
Yeah, and there, to all the UAPs, you are welcome to come on the show. Now, that's actually also something that's true, right? In many of these interviews with these people, it turns out that if you start looking for these things, and if you have this, biophysical makeup. That's probably a precondition. Then you know these things will find you and apparently also interact with you and download stuff into your mind. So you know, I don't know if I want that, but yeah. We live in interesting times.
Yep. And more interesting times are about to come. So get ready.
Absolutely, because Trump put all the right people in the right places. Well, maybe not all the right people, but they are all pro crypto and pro UAPs. So in that regard, that's the right people in the right places.
Yeah. Let's rumble. Let's go.
Let's rumble. And in the background, you see basically Sid's artwork. So if you're interested, follow Sid. That is Awaken. What is your handle again?
Awaken_luck.
Yeah. We'll also link it underneath, and then you can check out his NFTs, which are really cool. And with that, we're gonna take off and see you next time.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.